Hi there, welcome back. Let's talk about different stages of compilation, which are lexical analysis, syntax analysis, code generation, and optimization. Before we start talking about the different stages of compilation, let's look at the key difference between interpreter and compiler. As mentioned in the previous lesson, interpreter will execute the code line by line until it meets error. On the other hand, the key idea of compiler is to convert the source code to object code so that we can execute the object code later on without reading the full code line by line again. Make sure you know the key differences between them. We have actually covered these basics back in chapter 5 of this syllabus. As mentioned right from the beginning, we have 4 main stages in the compilation of a program, which are lexical analysis, syntax analysis, code generation, and optimization. Let's start with lexical analysis. First of all, white spaces or redundant characters or comments are removed. Then, we will do identifications of errors. Next, we will convert a sequence of characters into a sequence of tokens known as tokenization. We will first use a keyword table that contains all the tokens for the reserved words and symbols as shown on the table on the right. It will contain reserved keywords like if, else, for, and etc. It also contains operators like multiplication, equal, and etc. For all the keywords and operators, we will have their matching tokens as shown in the table on the right here. The next table that we use will be symbol table. Variables and constants and other identifiers used in a program are also added to a symbol table. You can think of it this way. We will use 2 tables, which are keyword table shown on the previous slide, as well as symbol tables to get their corresponding tokens. Inside the symbol table, we will have the identifier name used, data type, and value. So this value is actually the token value. So the overall process will be keywords or operators are looked up in the keyword table, and they are represented by tokens. Next, identifiers are looked up in the symbol table and they are converted to locations or addresses. Finally, we will use them to create a sequence of tokens for the program. You might still feel a bit confused by this point of time, but no worries. In the next slide, I will show you a full demo so you can understand better. First of all, we have the keyword table. Next, we also prepare the symbol table beforehand based on the sample code that I will show you later. Now, let's look at the lexical analysis example. We have a sample code here, whereby we are just multiplying the input number from 1 to 12 and output the corresponding values. The output from the lexical analysis stage is stored in the table below. Each cell will store 1 byte of the output. Let's start with the first line, which is assigning 1 to the variable start. We will get 60, 1, and 61. How do we get these values? It's actually quite simple. First of all, we go into the identifier table to get the value of start, which is 60 based on this example. Then the next one will be the arrow here. We can find the arrow from the keyword table having the value of 1. Finally, we can look for the value of identifier 1 inside the symbol table again. In this case, it will be 61. So this is how we can get 60, 1, and 61. Then we repeat the same thing for the second line, which is input number. And we get 51, 62. So 51 from the keyword table and 62 from the symbol table. Then we can repeat for the third line of the code. Take note that we will ignore the comments. And then fourth line and finally fifth line. Feel free to pause the video and work out the tokens yourself. You should get the same value as shown in the slide here. The next stage of compilation will be syntax analysis. It uses parsing algorithms to interpret the meaning of a sequence of tokens that we created in the previous stage. This stage checks whether the code matches the grammar of the language and ensures that the tokens conform to the programming language rules. For example, language grammar rules can be set out in the Parker's-Nowell form BNF notation. We will talk more about BNF in the later lesson, so don't worry too much about this for now. During this stage, any syntax error in the code are identified and reported. The process results in the production of a parse tree. If errors are found, each problematic statement and its associated errors are reported, and the process halts, preventing progression to the next stage, which is code generation. Take note that as long as we have errors here, we will stop at this stage. So as I say, if the tokenized code is error-free, it is then passed on to the subsequent stage of code generation. Let's say the syntax analysis stage was error-free, we will move on to this next stage, which is code generation. This stage converts an intermediate representation of source code into an executable form. The source code must be syntactically correct for successful generation of an object program. The object program is in a machine-readable form, typically binary, and is not designed for human readability. It means that we can't actually understand the object program. Lastly, the object program is either directly in machine code executable by the CPU or in an intermediate form that is converted to machine code when the program is loaded. You might be asking, why do we need to use intermediate code? So using intermediate code provides greater flexibility. It allows for the use of relocatable code, enabling the program to be stored anywhere in main memory. The addition of library routines at this stage to minimize the size of the stored object program, and also the linking of several programs to run concurrently. Now, let's talk about the final stage, which is code optimization. First of all, why code optimization? It aims to create an object program that is efficient in performance. It minimizes resources used such as storage space, memory, CPU, and etc. It also removes redundant code as fewer instructions required. Code will also be reorganized to make it more efficient. Lastly, program will complete tasks in a shorter time, so code will run faster. Now let's look at this very basic example of code optimization. We have this original code here whereby w is equal to x plus y and v is equal to x plus y plus z. So the optimized version will be changing v to w plus z. So this optimization involves performing the addition x plus y only once and using the value of w for further calculations. This reduces the number of operations. Also take note that the given example of optimization works only if the two lines of code are adjacent and in the specified order in the program. Lastly, the task of code optimization is one of the most challenging stages of compilation. Not all compilers can optimize the object code produced for every source program effectively.